Harry Potter.
Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. A huge turning point to the Harry Potter series. A book that really marks the end of the beginning phase of Harry Potter, which is all about magic and whimsy, and brings it to a more dark and gritty phase, where characters can die, and life is on the line, and the entire story boils down to a battle of good versus evil. But there are a couple huge issues when we step back and take a look at it objectively.
Did you put your name in that Goblet of Fire?
For example, Lord Voldemort, the smartest and greatest dark wizard that the world has ever seen.
Terrible. But great.
Seems to have the most convoluted plan possible to capture Harry. All he needed was Harry to touch a portkey at any point in time. He could have easily just gotten Barty Crouch Jr. to hand him a textbook on the first day of class and say, "Hey, Harry, how about you pick up this book for me?" Harry, "Okay," and then boom, plot done, and he saved himself 8 months. Instead, Voldemort went on a rigmarole that took him an entire school year to capture Harry. And he does this with one of the most contested and confusing parts of the book. The Triwizard Cup that has been turned into a portkey that for some reason works twice. But maybe this isn't a mistake at all, and in fact part of a genius plan that we have never realized. Today we're going to look into Voldemort's plan in Goblet of Fire on this episode of Constant Review. Throughout the Harry Potter book series, we can see Harry take portkeys on a number of occasions. In total, Harry uses 5 different portkeys to travel 6 different times in the Harry Potter universe. That discrepancy is the time that I want to investigate. The Triwizard Cup, and the only time Harry has ever used a portkey twice. We fittingly learn about portkeys in the chapter The Portkey in the beginning of Goblet of Fire. Portkeys are objects that have been enchanted using a charm in order to transmit the user over distances. They're particularly useful for wizards who don't like to apparate or don't want to fly or use other modes of transportation, and they can be used across continents to travel wizards through much further distances that we've been able to see in other forms of transportation. The first portkey that we are introduced to is a manky old boot at the top of Stoat's Head Hill.
Standing around that manky old boot. That isn't just any manky old boot, mate. It's a portkey.
That takes the Weasleys and Harry, as well as the Diggory family, to the Quidditch World Cup. The portkey works in a very precise way. At a specific time stipulated by the Ministry of Magic, the portkey will take anyone touching it along with it to the Quidditch World Cup. In fact, in every instance we see of a portkey that we know of, it appears that this is the main purpose. At a specific time, the portkey will activate and be used to transfer the witch or wizard to their destination. Now this becomes an issue with the Triwizard Cup. When Harry touches the Triwizard Cup at the end of Goblet of Fire, it transfers him and Cedric straight to the graveyard at Little Hangleton. This already makes this portkey unique, as it doesn't work at a specific time, but instead it works upon the first witch or wizard to touch it. Or in Harry's case, the first 2, as Harry and Cedric touch the portkey at the exact same time. So first we have to consider why the portkey works like this. Why is it different than every other portkey we've seen? Well, the answer seems simple. As explained by Barty Crouch Jr., the objective was to transfer Harry when he touched the cup first, and therefore the portkey would have to activate when the first person touched it. Which leads us to believe that Barty Crouch Jr. is in fact the person who turned the Triwizard Cup into a portkey. In fact, he claims this himself at the end of Goblet of Fire. But interestingly enough, Dumbledore also seemed to reference there being an important part of touching the portkey first. When Dumbledore explains the rules to the third task, he very specifically says that the winner of the third task is whoever touches the portkey first.
First person to touch the cup will be the winner.
Furthermore, Dumbledore nor any of the judges seem surprised when Harry appears at the edge of the maze. In fact, the only thing they are surprised by is Cedric's lifeless body. We know from Deathly Hallows that in Quidditch, snitches have a very specific spell on them in order to identify who has touched them first. This spell is used to help referees determine which seeker caught the snitch first in case of a disputed capture. Dumbledore, being aware of this, would surely have placed some sort of enforcement to guarantee that it would be obvious who grabbed the Triwizard Cup first. In fact, because of the way the challenge was stipulated, if a person was to grab the Triwizard Cup and then it not take them out of the maze, it would be very easy for another contestant to try to pull or steal the cup away from them before they were able to show anyone that they had in fact already won. We also have to take into account something Hermione told us back in Prisoner of Azkaban, that Hogwarts is protected by much more than walls, and there are various powerful enchantments on the castle to stop people from being able to bring people in and out of the castle using magic. In the entire book series, we only see 2 instances of people being able to enter the castle at stealth or using magic. And these instances are in Half-Blood Prince, where Dumbledore and Harry are able to fly over the boundaries of the school. When this is done, Dumbledore has to murmur enchantments in order to lower the wards of the school. The other example is also in Half-Blood Prince, when Harry, Ron, Hermione, and the rest of the 6th years are practicing for their apparition test in the Great Hall. It's told to us explicitly by Wilkie Twycross that the only reason why they can apparate in the Great Hall during the apparition class is because Dumbledore has temporarily disabled the enchantment that stops apparition from being possible within Hogwarts. And lastly, despite the fact that many people would benefit from being able to come and go to Hogwarts at will, the only time anyone uses a portkey in Hogwarts is done by Dumbledore, twice in Order of the Phoenix. Dumbledore creates a portkey that is able to transfer Harry and the Weasleys out of the castle, as well as another portkey that can bring Harry into the castle, seemingly going around these magical wards that Hogwarts is protected by. The underlying theme here is that the only way to get in and out of Hogwarts by magic is with the authority of the headmaster. And this could explain why the Triwizard Cup portkey acts completely differently than every other portkey in the series. The Triwizard Cup portkey was enchanted by Dumbledore, or with the permission of Dumbledore, in order to bring the contestant to the edge of the maze. That way, it would be extremely unlikely that anyone would be able to steal the cup away from the person who touched it first, thereby eliminating a disputed capture. It would also eliminate the need for the winner to walk all the way back out of the hedge maze after they had already completed the task. But by turning the Triwizard Cup into a portkey, this created an object that can now go around the magical defenses of the school. All Barty Crouch Jr. would have to do would be to either confound the portkey into confusing where it was supposed to take the user.
The Goblet of Fire is an exceptionally powerful magical object. Only an exceptionally powerful Confundus charm could have hoodwinked it.
Or adding in another portkey charm onto it to create a second location that the portkey would take the user first. But either way, it means that the only way to bring someone out of the castle at this point in time was the Triwizard Cup. And that explains the ludicrousy of Voldemort's plan. The reason why Voldemort couldn't just have Barty Crouch Jr. give Harry a portkey on one of the first days of class, or else come up with a much simpler solution in order to steal Harry away from the school, is that no object could have been turned into a portkey without Dumbledore's say-so. But by using the inside information he got from Bertha Jorkins, he knew that Dumbledore would need to create a portkey in the third task of the Triwizard Tournament, and there would be one opening in order for him to steal someone out of Hogwarts, and that would be by having that one person win the Triwizard Cup. And there you go, guys. Finally, an explanation as to why Voldemort's plan in Goblet of Fire was so complicated, and why the Triwizard Cup works differently than every other portkey we've seen in the series. So guys, do you think I'm right? And this is the reason why the Portkey works differently? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!